I'm Sue O'Connell. Tonight on Greater Boston, 1 year on from the mass shooting at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, parents, neighbors, and investigators are still searching for answers. In a new film from FRONTLINE, journalist Maria Hinojosa hears from the families most impacted by the attack. She joins me ahead. Then, the federal government is investing nearly $6 million in a local institute to help address the nationwide nursing shortage. It's been a year since a gunman shot and killed 19, 9, 10, and 11-year-old students and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. 17 others were hurt, and the entire community was shaken. The 18-year-old shooter was armed with a legally purchased assault rifle and over 200 rounds of ammunition. Once he got into the school, he barricaded himself into one of the classrooms, killing many of the people trapped inside. Despite several calls for help and nearly 400 officers on the scene, police waited over an hour before breaking in and killing the shooter.
Do you talk to Caitlin about that day?
I try not to bring it up, but there's just a part of her that has become obsessed in wanting to understand what happened, why they didn't go in when they had the chance.
That's a very profound obsession for a 10-year-old to have.
Yeah. You know, the one place where she was supposed to have been safe and she wasn't.
In the immediate aftermath, questions swirled about how this was able to happen in the first place. Why was the shooter allowed to buy that gun? Why did police wait so long to act? And where do we go from here? A new film from FRONTLINE digs into those lingering questions. It's called After Uvalde, Guns, Grief, and Texas Politics. The Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist behind it, Maria Hinojosa, joins me now ahead of the film's premiere. Welcome so much to you. Thank you for joining us. Maria, so many of these tragic criminal shootings are alike in so many ways, yet unique in their own way. What was unique about this tragedy?
You're exactly right. I covered mass shootings, sadly, since Columbine. I was at the El Paso massacre. But something about Uvalde immediately called out to me. And I actually immediately reached out to Rainey at FRONTLINE because I said, there's a story here that we need to understand. And why? Because this was a young Latino kid from the community who had all of the warning signs, and yet there was no way, no place for him to get help. No one really kind of targeted him and said, look, his nickname was School Shooter. It could not have been clearer for everyone that this was a problem. For me, the thought that a kid from this community would turn on his own in his own former 4th grade classroom, killing kids who look just like him, an hour away from the border. And when we first reported about this, when it happened a year ago on Latino USA, what we realized is that Uvalde actually has a history of activism. In 1970, it was one of the longest student school walkouts. And the kids walked out back then because they were being paddled for speaking Spanish in a town that is now majority Latino, an hour away from the U.S.-Mexico border, and yet they were being hit for speaking Spanish. So this is a place that when I understood this, I was like, I need to go to understand further, along with the question of what happened? 77 minutes, close to 400 police officers, and they didn't advance until 77 minutes in.
One of the things about this tragedy to me is that it seems to epitomize all of the problems that all of these shootings have, and also counters the if only we had police on the scene, if only we had this, if only we had that. Can you talk a little bit about the dysfunction that happened here, which are also the pillars in some of these other shootings?
Right. So what we, working alongside the Texas Tribune, we were able to see some of that footage. That's, in fact, the piece that you used there is when Zach Despart from the Texas Tribune is showing me the footage that he got access to. And, we see the police arrive we see them, in fact, at one point, very soon try to advance. And that's when the shooter actually shoots through the door of the classroom, and they realize that he is armed with an AR. And at that moment, we capture that also in the Frontline. It's when they realize, like, wait a second, an AR can shoot through our police armor. Therefore, we are not protected. And what I think everybody has a hard time understanding is that police and law enforcement are trained over and over again, especially in a mass shooting. You go in, you do not wait. You have to go in and engage immediately, because the more time you wait, the more people could get shot. They didn't do that. They broke all protocol. And I think, it's hard to put a label on this, especially in an investigative documentary. But my sense is that they had a very human reaction. They were terrified.
We want to play a clip from it with talking about Zach Despart, the Texas Tribune reporter. He's describing the police response as you did here.
After they're initially driven back, they don't re-engage the shooter. That is not what they are trained to do. Since the Columbine shooting in 1999, they're supposed to engage active shooters until they are subdued. They do not wait for backup. They do not wait for more equipment. The more time you wait, more people can get killed, and the people that wounded can die. Over the next 40 minutes, more officers arrive. More officers arrive. Most, if not all, of the killing took place before police had the opportunity to intervene.
Maria, I have never met a law enforcement officer who thinks it's a good idea for people to have these weapons, and to your point, reacting in a human way when their own lives were in danger, knowing what would happen. What's the temperature of Texas when it comes to understanding that if law enforcement is afraid to engage to protect innocent, unarmed children, why are these weapons in circulation?
That's a very difficult question to ask, to answer in a question in a matter of minutes, right? That's a big part of our documentary. And here's the thing: in Texas, there is a gun culture, but no one in Uvalde, the families that are fighting for some kind of gun reform, they are gun owners, most of them. They're not saying get rid of all guns. They're not even saying ban assault weapons. What they are asking for and advocating for in their activism is to raise the age from 18 to 21. The politics in Texas, basically the radical kind of more conservative Republican, it's like if you do anything that touches our guns, it's a threat on the Second Amendment. But in fact, the situation in Texas is that it's the second state with the highest level of mass shootings. And it used to be that you could say, well, mass shooting happened there, but it's never going to happen here. And an analyst that we spoke to said, in Texas, it's getting to the point where everybody can say, no, well, I know someone or someone that I know. It's getting too close. And they said that there is a temperature of maybe we need to raise the age. It didn't happen in this legislative session. It got pushed because of the activism of the families of Uvalde, which again stands out in terms of this mass shooting. And they'll be able to try again in 2 years. Unfortunately, there will be other mass shootings until then, but the governor refuses to engage with the families on this. You
spent time with families and some of the children who were survivors of the shooting. I'm always hesitant to, I get upset when I see coverage and people say they were unharmed, when obviously the entire community was harmed and the children at the school were harmed by the incident. I loved your coloring excursion, your artwork with one of the kids. What did you take away from the children who have lived through this experience?
Well, there are a lot of children, and we actually focused on one. And right now, she is probably the most famous person from Uvalde, because this morning, when I was on Morning Joe and I was sitting with a bunch of newspapers, she is above the fold on the front page of the New York Times in a picture that takes up half of the page. This is Caitlin Gonzalez. She is a survivor, and what she has done is that she has found a way to transform her sorrow and her rage into activism. And She's also deep in therapy because her mother, Gladys, and father, Neff, completely understand how important that is. So they traveled to San Antonio to get her intensive therapy. But there are so many children in Uvalde right now, I would say all of them, right, who are touched, and they all need therapy. But, talking about therapy, people don't talk about therapy. It's a very private thing. So it's almost like I've been saying, it's like what would be the best or a great way to start is if there was like communal therapy. Come and let's all listen to music and let's all be together and hold hands. Because people need to understand that therapy can actually be effective. Because remember, at least in many Latino communities, therapy is not something that is kind of discussed. And certainly in the town of Uvalde, where there was only one psychiatrist, it was just not available to even discuss.
I want to ask you about a controversial subject, even within folks who are looking for stricter gun laws and safety laws, and that's about the bodies of the victims of these shootings from these particular weapons. I actually had a friend who was shot once in a robbery. He's fine now, obviously a little trauma from it, but he said to me he was surprised at how much it hurt. It was just a regular handgun, the old-fashioned handgun, because we are so often in this culture watching movies and TV shows where people get shot and they just continue on, and it's not a big deal. And in one of the recent shootings, some photos of the children who were killed circulated online. And we have activists here in Boston who say, we should see those photos. We should see what these weapons do to these children. And in the documentary, in Frontline, you talk to the one and only pediatrician, I believe, who had to go through that terrible ordeal of looking at these children. What are you hearing from people about whether or not we, the public should see these photos?
This is you're right, it's very controversial. And first thing I want to say is to anybody who has lost a child like this, all deep respect, and you have the ultimate decision on what should and shouldn't happen. But on one of my trips down to Texas, I was in a plane and I watched the movie Till. And it's there where we heard the story of Mama Mobley Till, who made the decision to show an open casket. I will tell you that after what I was privy to see, I am not the same person after what I have seen. And I have to be honest with you, this is not the Frontline. This is me. This is Maria Hinojosa, an individual, not Frontline, not Futuro. This is just me as a human being. I thought if everybody saw what I just saw, there would be a massive uprising against this. There would be a massive urge to say, ban them now, because it is horrific. This will happen when someone is prepared. Now, in the case of Uvalde, by the way, the families have not been privy to any of this material. Obviously, they buried their children, but part of what happened after Emmett Till is that it is more difficult for parents to get access to photographs documenting this. And I think that they have the right. The families have the right. This is their child. They have the right to make the decision that works for them. And what happens in terms of American history, that's why American history is so fascinating, because we actually respond to these things. And again, the families of Uvalde are responding not by showing open caskets, but by taking their activism to the state capitol and to Washington, D.C. as well.
So, this is where we live now, right? As you say, Columbine, I remember it well, and now here we are. It's hard for me to keep track, unfortunately, of what mass shooting has happened when. What's the lesson we can take here? What are we learning that we can hopefully move forward and make positive change?
I think that I feel like there is a turning point in our country, and I know that that's hard to say. But I do feel like the reality that guns are the leading cause of death for children in the United States, the sense that we all feel like it's all around us, that there, it used to be just moms, moms protesting, moms against violence, like the moms that were actually with Caitlin in Austin. And I feel like it's becoming a kind of national political issue. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not an activist or an organizer, but I think there have been, yes, marches in the past led by moms. I think that is something that might happen again sooner than we imagine. Again, this is a democracy, and the role of journalists is to simply show what is happening and let people decide what their actions are going to be.
Maria Hinojosa, thank you so much. A pleasure to speak with you. Congratulations on this project. Important work. Definitely must watch. Thank you for taking time with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
After Uvalde, Guns, Grief, and Texas Politics premieres on PBS on Tuesday, May 30th at 10 p.m. and will be available to stream at wgbh.org/frontline, on Frontline's YouTube page, or on the PBS video app. Before the onset of COVID-19, the medical field was slammed with another epidemic, nurses leaving the field in droves as burnout and existing staffing shortages took their toll. With thousands upon thousands leaving nursing and older generations inching towards retirement, hospitals are looking toward the next generation to bridge the gap. But many young would-be nurses may not have the opportunity to break into the field thanks to another shortage within the industry, nursing instructors, which force nursing schools and hospital clinical instruction programs to cut down on how many students they can accept. It's a problem the Department of Labor is hoping to fix through $78 million in grants to help fund and facilitate nurse training programs across the country. The MGH Institute of Health Professions is among the recipients with nearly $6 million in funding to partner with the Mass General Brigham Health System to strengthen the pipeline for nurse educators. I'm joined now by the president of the MGH Institute, Paula Milone-Nuzzo, and Erin Flanigan, Senior Vice President of Talent at Mass General Brigham. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
I'm told this was an invisible problem, barrier, and I'm ashamed to say it didn't ever occur to me that not having enough instructors is a problem. What's happening here?
Well, it's been a problem that has been around for quite some time, the shortage of nursing faculty, because the credentials that one needs in order to become a nursing faculty member are slightly higher than a bedside nurse. We need a master's degree at minimum to be a faculty member, and most programs require doctoral preparation in order to teach didactically in the classroom. So when nurses become nurses, they tend to work in the hospital for a period of time, and some of them don't go back for further education, and so they can't move into the education domain. The other problem is nurses in the hospital make more money than faculty, and so the progress to a faculty position is really part of a passion. You know, people have experiences in education and want to do that. And so the nursing faculty shortage has been around for years, actually.
And Erin, has anyone ever taken steps to try and address that problem before? You know, and we're going to talk about COVID and all the challenges and boomers and aging populations and all that. But since this has been a problem, has anyone looked at it before and said, we better do something about this?
Well, we've looked at the problem because it's been staring us in the face on the employment side of the fence. So one of the areas that I oversee is talent acquisition. And so as new nurses are graduating from school, we're interested in placing them in our different hospitals. But one of the barriers that we did face was that busy department hospitals focused on patient care didn't always have the capacity to take on newly graduated nurses and help them really get upskilled and comfortable in this complex working environment. We don't want to just throw our folks to the wolves out there. So making sure that you have clinical instructors that can actually bring in new grads, help them get comfortable in the working environment. Oftentimes, we didn't have those staff members ready to take in the new grads. So understanding the skill mix and experience in a particular unit is something that nurse managers do on a daily basis, and we were unable to place newly graduated nurses that wanted to work with us and for us. We weren't able to bring them into the working environment.
So From my just sort of layman's view of the nursing world and the employment world, you could tell me which one of you should answer this question. From what I understand, we have a lot of veterans who are serving as nurses who were unable to get licensed appropriately because although they were licensed in the Army or Navy, they didn't have the, and this might go state to state by state, they had to do additional training and they weren't quick to get right into the nursing force. You have a number of young nurses who have decided they want to do this, who are now traveling nurses, who go from state to state to make a lot of money filling in places where we have these gaps with older folks and people just leaving. Is there a holistic solution to this staffing problem, which I think if we look at as a chessboard, we can move around?
Well, I can jump in real quickly and you can add, Paula, but you know, these are the kind of talent management questions that we're asking ourselves every single day. How do we make sure the pipeline is robust, wherever that's coming from? And it's a whole range of solutions that we have to come up with. How do we attract more people and get them interested in coming into healthcare as an industry? How do we make sure that we have the right working environment, supportive working environment to retain our workforce and our nurses as well? How do we make sure that we're focusing on career mobility, which is so important to nurses today, and understanding where their career can go? How do we have the right culture of mobility and continuous development and learning? How are we hedging against those retirements that you mentioned? So 12% of our workforce is past retirement age or within 5 years of retirement age.
That's a big number.
So in addition to normal attrition, we're staring those types of things in the face. And that's why this particular Department of Labor grant is so instrumental for us, because we see the larger looming issue. And we need to make sure that we have faculty in place so that we can get more nurses through the schools, and that we have clinical instructors in our own working environment that can help support the new students as they're coming through.
Yeah.
Do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to lose about a million nurses in the next 10 years. The average age of the nurse is 52. And so when you look at that, it's so critically important that we replenish and increase the number of nurses that we prepare. The other piece of the clinical educator role is we all, as academics, have to place our students in clinical experiences. That's how they really learn. It's an apprenticeship model where they learn how to become a nurse. And we need people on the floors to be able to help us educate our nurses, our students, to be able to go into a place like Mass General Brigham and be functional, be well equipped to care for patients and be effective. So these individuals that we're going to be training through this Department of Labor grant are going to be individuals who are on the floor and can take a group of our students, 2 or 3 of our students, at one time to be able to educate them so that they get the clinical hours they need in order to progress in their program. What happened during the pandemic was we couldn't place students in the clinical setting because it was we didn't know really what the clinical setting was like in at that point, and it was very disrupted. And so we need to get back to having all those individuals, those educators, those clinical educators in places like Mass General Brigham so that our students can get the clinical education they need.
So what is it, see one, do one, teach one?
Not really.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore. It
That
used to
Grey's
be.
Anatomy lies to me all the time, all the time.
That's more of a physician education model.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I find fascinating about this whole industry, the nursing world of it, is I have a family member who's a frequent flyer with health issues and wants to be in the medical field, and every doctor she has talked to said, no, you want to be a nurse.
Yeah.
That's what you want to be. Is this a growing, is it the time for nurses right now?
It is the time for nurses. I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, when we went through the pandemic, it was so clear that the nurses were holding up the healthcare institutions. They were making things happen on the floors. They were taking care of patients. They were defining a clinical practice in ways that we haven't seen in the past. And it's now is our time to capitalize on that, to make sure that we continue the work towards valuing nursing, putting the nurse at the center of the healthcare delivery system and helping the nursing profession continue to attract really great people.
How's this money going to get used? How's it going to help you?
How's it going to help us as an employer? Really in a number of different ways. So when I think about the sweet spot of what this hits is we need to make sure that we have clinical instructors available so that we are able to bring the new grads into the organization. Patient care is more complex than ever. It's changing rapidly. Patients that are coming to our front doors are sicker than ever. So nursing care is really more complex than ever. And so getting advanced degrees and advanced training on this is really helping people continue to upskill their abilities as well as be peer supports, right? So nursing care and patient care, it's hard work. Part of what we saw during the turnover during the pandemic was due to burnout, right? People actually opted out of healthcare as a career. Yes. And so what this grant does for us is really allow us to have people who needed to advance their career, wanted to advance their career, maybe had some economic barriers to choosing to advance their career. It now gives them really a no regrets way to move forward, upskill themselves, come into our working environment, be a peer support, be a clinical educator, and really help us get new grad nurses moving through the system. So it creates, in my opinion, a much more supportive working environment for the nurses.
Just as we wrap up, anything we need to add?
Well, one of the things that I think is a critical dimension of this grant is increasing diversity of our workforce. And we are going to work collaboratively with lots of partners in the community to help us increase the number of individuals from underrepresented groups, bring them into healthcare. That will not only help healthcare, it will help the education because it draws the students in as well.
Paula Milone-Nuzzo and Erin Flanigan, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck. I can't wait to see all these nurses out on the floor and in the instruction area. Thanks so much.
Great.
Thank you so much.
That's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Sue O'Connell. Thanks for watching. Good night.